Millionaire laughs, offers $5 million to fix it. What the cleaner does will leave you HEARTWARMED. Eddie wiped the sweat from his brow, heart racing as the news blared from the television in the dingy corner of his apartment. A millionaire Gerald, a man with more money than he knew what to do with, was throwing a gala to boast about his riches. But it was the audacious challenge that sent shockwaves through Eddie's heart. Fix the community center and win $5 million. Eddie couldn't ignore it. Not with bills lining his kitchen counter and a dream of a better life for Lily, his spirited daughter with special needs. As the moon climbed high, Eddie gathered with his neighbors, a blend of folks molded by struggle, laughter, and love. The mysterious man who preached generosity had belittled them just hours before, but at that moment, they were transforming into a force more powerful than Gerald's glitzy mansion filled with gold. With each hammer stroke against the tired walls, the dilapidated community center began to reflect the warmth of a united community. Laughter echoed, mixing with paint splatter and shouts of encouragement. Within those painted walls, Eddie told Lily stories, showering her with love amidst the chaos. Their home was filled with patient smiles, gentle hugs, and moments where they cherished the small things, showing her the strength of resilience and hope. The wind of progress blew strong until disaster struck. An unrelenting storm tore through Maplewood, leaving wreckage and despair in its wake. Eddie stood in the ruins, chest tight, heart twisting like the fallen limbs around him. Just as he thought the weight would crush him, he marched right up to Gerald, vulnerability bear. "You think success is just about money?" Eddie challenged, a fire igniting in his chest. The community watched, breaths held like a heartbeat suspended in time. "It's built on sacrifice, on nights spent holding a sick child instead of dreaming for yourself. It's about connection and caring for one another." Words poured from him, heavy yet liberating. "Oh, please," Gerald scoffed, as out of touch as ever, peering down at the gravel-stained, tired figure before him. The air crackled with tension. Eddie's voice dropped, raw with emotion. "We build the world you take for granted. You owe it to us to see the humanity in this. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Silence enveloped the crowd, emotions swirling like leaves in the wind. Eddie was ready to break, but hope flickered in the most unlikely spaces. Gerald paused. His icy wall of privilege breached, a man forced to confront his own reflection in Eddie's passion. Suddenly, the fight for the center felt like more than just a task. It was a bridge that could weave both their lives together. Can they both rediscover what it means to be human in this landscape of privilege and pain? As the storm clouds drifted away, leaving behind remnants of growth and change, the questions loomed heavy. Could unshakable bonds be forged through shattered dreams, or would the shadows of their pasts loom too large to dismiss? The winds of change had barely begun to howl. Eddie held his breath, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. As he faced Gerald, he could feel the weight of the community's hopes pressing down on him. The eyes of his friends, neighbors, and the few onlookers watching the scene unfolded felt like a collective heartbeat, alive with anticipation. Gerald's brow furrowed slightly, the bravado he usually displayed wavering for just a moment. Eddie sensed a flicker of doubt, a hint of curiosity breaking through the surface of indifference. He seized that moment, ready to dig deeper, to reveal the heart of what mattered most. "Look around you, Gerald," Eddie urged, sweeping his arm to embrace the scene. "This place is more than just bricks and mortar. It's a sanctuary. It's where our kids play, where our dreams are nurtured. It's where we rise above the noise of the world, together." The rain had passed, but the remnants lingered in the shadows of the fallen community center. The walls needed repair, but so did the relationships that had been strained both among the community and with Gerald, who had become their unexpected adversary. Eddie needed to break through the stone wall that was Gerald's isolating wealth. "Tell me," Eddie continued, his voice unwavering, "what does all your money mean if it doesn't lift others up? What good is wealth if your heart is closed?" The crowd murmured, some shaking their heads in disbelief, while others nodded in agreement. Gerald's expression softened, just a touch and opening, a crack in his tough exterior. Eddie could feel a wave of hope wafting through the crowd. Could they be the ones to show him the way? New angle, Gerald muttered, half to himself, half to those around him. He seemed lost in thought. Eddie held his breath, adrenaline surging through him. This was it. This was the moment of truth. Just think about it, Eddie pressed, feeling the strength of the community behind him. Giving $5 million to fix a building is not a charity case, Gerald. It's an investment in people, in dreams, in potential. A hush fell over the gathering as they waited for Gerald's response. Eddie's heart raced, pounding in his ears. The seconds ticked by painfully. Then, just as Gerald opened his mouth to speak, a child's laughter broke through the tension, a melodic reminder of why they were standing there in the first place. Lily, watching from the sidelines, a small figure adorned in a raincoat several sizes too large, played in the puddles, splashing joyfully. The sight of her was a burst of warmth amidst the storm that had engulfed everything else. Eddie's heart swelled with a mix of pride and concern. Would she ever understand the weight of this moment? What if Gerald began, hesitating before letting the thought out? What if I match that $5 million with another 5 if you can show me that this community is worth rebuilding, worth investing in? Gasps echoed around them. This was more than Eddie had expected, a flicker of genuine interest wrapped in a challenge. It was almost too good to be true. But behind that shimmer of hope was a shadow. Eddie had learned to never take anything at face value, especially from someone like Gerald. Why should I trust you? Eddie asked, the question heavy with skepticism. Gerald frowned, his next words potentially tipping the scale one way or the other. Because I need to understand the value of community more than just through my wallet, he replied, sincerity mingling with uncertainty. As the crowd began to buzz with excitement, Eddie felt a mix of caution and ambition at the same time. Could they really shift the tides? Could this begin a new chapter for Maplewood? The battle was just beginning, but the stakes were higher than ever. Eddie realized they were not just fighting for a community center anymore. They were in the midst of forging an alliance, one that challenged the fundamentals of wealth and connection. Would they succeed, or would Gerald's past find a way to pull him back into his insulated world? As they prepared to take the next step, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. Would Eddie find it in himself to lead the way, to nurture something far bigger than himself? Eddie felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through him. The stakes were higher than anyone had ever anticipated, and stepping into the unknown was now more than just a challenge. It was a responsibility. The crowd buzzed with a mix of hope and disbelief. What would they do if Gerald's offer was real? He could feel the pulse of Maplewood, its heart beating fast around him. Just like that, Eddie thought, glancing at the faces surrounding him. There was fear in some eyes, excitement in others, but all of them wore a common expression, one of longing. They all wanted a home, a community center that offered not just safety but a chance to thrive. Gerald stood still, and for a brief moment, the world felt like it was holding its breath. The sound of the rain-drenched ground beneath the children's feet filled the silence, an echo of potential. Eddie stepped forward again, sensing that the air was ripe for action. Gerald, he said, letting the sincerity drip from his voice. If we give this a shot, you can see for yourself what this community is worth. You've said you want to understand. Well, here's your chance. Let us show you. Gerald's brows knitted together. Eddie worried the millionaire might back away entirely. But then, with a hint of determination, he stepped into the thrumming energy of the crowd, driven by Eddie's conviction. There was still a spark of resistance in Gerald's posture, but Eddie caught a glimmer of something almost tender, like a flicker of a candle ready to ignite. Let us make this transparent, Gerald said, the edge of his voice even softer, more contemplative. You'll need to come up with a detailed plan, and I want to see how those funds will directly impact your community. A few murmurs broke out among the crowd, a mixture of worry and intrigue. Eddie knew this would mean more work ahead, a way to truly showcase what they could achieve. But it struck him that this was the very opportunity they hoped for. Perhaps Gerald would finally see their struggle without the smokescreen of money. I'll organize a meeting, he responded confidently, raising his voice over the renewed stir in the crowd. We can collaborate on a project that reflects what we stand for. You'll meet the people who rely on this center. You'll see their dreams, their resilience. Gerald nodded, and a smile crept onto Eddie's face. Just then, Lily approached them, her sweet voice cutting through the tension. Mr. Gerald, do you want to play with us? We can build a pretend community together. The laughter that erupted from the crowd propelled the swirling sensations of hope and possibility. Eddie looked at Gerald, searching for a flicker of warmth to reflect Lily's innocence. For a moment, the walls around him seemed to bend. Kids always have the best ideas, he replied with a faint smile, leaning slightly down to meet Lily's gaze. Eddie couldn't help but laugh softly. The vulnerability in Gerald was unexpected yet refreshing. Absolutely. Let us build something great, Eddie said, a sense of unity rippling through the throng of people, ignited like dry leaves catching fire in the autumn sunlight. But beneath the surface, doubts still flickered. Could Gerald truly grasp what it meant to engage with the community instead of merely writing checks? This was just the beginning, a thin thread pulled taut with untested faith. As they began to brainstorm ideas on how to present their plan, Eddie felt a tingle of resolve coursing through him. This was a step towards something monumental, yet the shadow of Gerald's past still loomed large, threatening to eclipse all their efforts. In the whirlwind of emotions, Eddie understood one thing. Trust could not be nurtured overnight. They needed to turn this chance into tangible results, not just promises. Would their alliance cultivate trust, or would Gerald fall back to his old ways as the past tugged at him, whispering doubts? With that uncertainty lingering, the next step lay ahead, a crossroad that might either mark their greatest triumph or their most profound disappointment. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Eddie's heart raced with the thrill of possibility and the weight of expectation. He had gathered a small team of passionate individuals from the community. Together, they turned the empty space of the community center into a vibrant hub of ideas. Sketches and plans filled the walls as laughter and debate danced through the air. Eddie felt buoyed by their energy. They worked tirelessly, fueled by late nights and cold coffee, shaping their vision into something solid. With every brainstorming session, he could see the hope reigniting in their eyes. People began to believe that change was within reach. On the third day, as they huddled around an old table covered with plans, Gerald's name surfaced constantly. Eddie had given him updates through texts, filled with eager enthusiasm. Gerald had promised to attend the meeting, but would he follow through? The anticipation hung over them like a thick fog. Do you really think he'll show? Asked Michelle, a single mom who had dedicated her evenings to the project. Her brow was furrowed, but her voice held a thread of hope. He has to, Eddie replied, determination shimmering in his tone. This is as much about him as it is about us. As the meeting day approached, Lily, with her innocent spirit, became the community's unexpected mascot. She would often peek into the room, her little hands clasped behind her back, eyes alight with dreams. Are we building it yet? She would ask, her sincerity tugging at their hearts, reminding them of the stakes involved. Eddie caught himself smiling every time she entered. Her laughter wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. The thought of disappointing her, or anyone in the community, was a weight he carried. The day of the meeting arrived, bringing a tension that crackled in the air. The community center was packed. Chairs lined the walls, and the atmosphere was thick with energy. When Gerald walked in, dressed in a crisp suit that seemed foreign amid the casual attire of the locals, all eyes turned. He looked out of place yet determined, the crowd's whispers filling the space like murmurs in a breeze. Thank you for being here, Eddie said, stepping forward to break the ice. We've put together something special for you. As Eddie unveiled their project proposal, a tangible piece of their collective dreams, he felt a surge of adrenaline. Each detail showcased their care and creativity. It echoed their stories, their struggles, and their hopes woven into a single narrative that made Maplewood more than a location, it was home. Gerald listened, his expression shifting from skepticism to surprise. He interacted with community members, listening as they shared poignant stories of resilience like the single mothers juggling work and family or the kids wanting a safe place to play. Eddie watched as the wall surrounding Gerald seemed to crack, but as the presentation reached its climax, Eddie's heart skipped a beat when he noticed flickers of doubt dance in Gerald's eyes. Would he appreciate the depths of their vision, or would he still see them through the lens of a transaction? Finally, Eddie took a breath and addressed the crowd. This isn't just about asking for money. It's about building something together, a future where everyone has a chance to flourish. We're not just asking you to invest in a center. We want you to invest in us. The silence that followed felt charged. It was a moment ripe with potential, teetering on the brink of something significant. Eddie glanced at Gerald, who remained contemplative, trapped in his thoughts. Would his past experiences lead him to embrace this new leaf? Or would he withdraw, reluctant to step outside his comfort zone? The weight of the crowd's gaze grew heavier as they waited for Gerald's response. Eddie's heart raced. This was at a moment that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the unknown. What would Gerald decide? The next chapter of Maplewood's story hung in the balance. Gerald stood there, the fluorescent lights of the community center casting a harsh glow on his face. He shifted uncomfortably, and Eddie could almost see the gears turning in his head. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, yet uncertainty flickered across Gerald's features, making the anticipation feel like a heavy shroud around their small group. Eddie, he began, his voice low, almost lost among the crowd. This is different. A collective breath was held, eyes wide. In that heartbeat, Eddie felt hope swell in his chest. This wasn't a rejection. This was an opening. Yes, it is, Eddie replied, the enthusiasm drifting out almost before he could catch himself. That's what we want. We're not stuck in our ways. We're learning, growing. Gerald nodded slightly, still weighing his words. But what if I give you this funding? What if then we build something amazing? Eddie cut in, his voice crackling with passion. We will create a space that belongs to all of us. Something that reflects who we are. Michelle leaned in, her eyes glistening with determination. Think about it, Gerald. This center can be a lifeline for people. It can shine a light where there has been darkness. Eddie watched as she spoke, her fervor igniting something within him. Lily's innocent laughter suddenly echoed in his mind, reminding him why they were fighting so hard for this. Gerald's brow furrowed deeper. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then hesitated, casting his gaze to the floor. The crowd, sensing his struggle, began to murmur softly, encouraging words flowing like a gentle stream. Eddie could see it, the tug of connection, of community pulling at Gerald's heart. I lost my way once, Gerald finally admitted, breaking the hush. I walked away from a place that needed me, thinking I could get ahead alone. I thought money was the answer. A ripple of understanding swept through the group. Eddie felt tears prick at his eyes as he recognized the shared scars of their lives. Each struggle, each shortcoming, that was what had brought them all together tonight. But you came back, Eddie urged gently. You've got the chance to help others find their way too. Gerald's expression softened, and for a fleeting moment, Eddie saw a flicker of hope reflected there. The man who had once seemed a million miles away was now physically present with them, bound by shared humanity. The silence that followed was as thick as molasses. Swallowed breaths filled the space, and no one dared to move. Suddenly, someone in the crowd stood. It was a middle-aged man named Tom, a carpenter from the neighborhood. Gerald, you may not know us, but every single one of us stands here tonight because we believe in each other. Our stories are woven together. Don't you want to be part of something meaningful? The earnestness of Tom's plea hung in the air like a new possibility. Eddie felt the pressure mount inside him. But it wasn't just anxiety, it was a burning determination. Gerald looked up, his eyes finally meeting the crowd's earnest gaze. I'm going to need to think about this, he said, his voice steadier. But I take your time, Eddie encouraged, not ready to let hope fade. Just know that when you look back, we'll be here, waiting. A shift had occurred, subtle yet powerful. This was not just a meeting. It was a moment of connection that stretched beyond walls and aspirations. It was a spark of change. As Gerald retreated into thought, Eddie felt a surge of purpose course through him. Whatever happened next, they had forged a new relationship, one built on shared dreams and the promise of collaboration. But as the crowd began to disperse, a tapping caught Eddie's attention. He turned to see Lily standing on her chair, eyes sparkling with curiosity. Are we building it yet? She asked, her innocence cutting through the tension like a knife. Eddie smiled tightly, knowing the weight of that question. Soon, Lily. Soon, but in the back of his mind, a question lingered. Would the investment come through, or would they need to fight harder for the change they craved? As he gathered his things, Eddie couldn't shake the feeling that the true test was only beginning. The fabric of their desire for change was taut, waiting for a release. Days turned into nights, and the weight began to wrap around Eddie like a thick fog. After the meeting, he replayed that moment over and over in his mind, the way Gerald's eyes lingered on the crowd, the flickers of hope in his voice. Yet now, uncertainty festered like a wound that wouldn't heal. What if the promise of change faded into smoke? He poured himself into work, checking in with every community member, seeing if they still believed, still dreamed. Michelle asked Eddie to join her in a neighborhood garden project, a distraction from the tension. He accepted, grateful for the chance to do something tangible, anything to stave off the relentless anxiety. Under the midday sun, Eddie dug into the earth alongside Michelle. They laughed, wiped sweat from their brows, and tried to ignore the knot in their stomachs. It was good to feel productive. Still, visions of the community center filled his thoughts. Would this garden flourish while their dreams withered away? Eddie, Michelle called, breaking his reverie as she clutched a small flower in her fingers. Look at this little guy. Bloom where you're planted, right? Her laughter rang out, genuine and warm. He chuckled, appreciating her optimism. Yeah, but we need more than just a flower. We need a whole garden to bring people together. Just like the center will, she grinned. It will be our garden for the community. The words hung in the air between them like a promise. The next morning, a loud knock reverberated through Eddie's small apartment. He opened the door to find Jerry, a fellow organizer whose unwavering energy was both contagious and overwhelming. Eddie, you're not going to believe this, Jerry exclaimed, eyes wide with excitement. What is up? Eddie asked, curiosity prickling him. Gerald. He wants to meet again. Today? Jerry's voice bounced with urgency, and Eddie's heart began to race. Today? He felt a wave of emotions crashing over him: hope, fear, exhilaration. What does that mean? I don't know, but he called me this morning. Said he's ready to discuss funding. This is huge. Eddie barely had time to process before Jerry was off, rattling through details as they rushed out the door together. At the community center, the buzz was electric, palpable. Eddie stood before a group of people who mirrored his anxiety. Tom was there, Michelle, and even Lily, who looked up at him, excitement gleaming in her eyes. Do you think he'll really come? Lily asked, bouncing on her toes. Absolutely, Eddie replied, trying to mask his own uncertainty. As they waited, Eddie felt the weight on his chest lift just a bit. Perhaps today would mark the start of something extraordinary. Footsteps echoed, and Eddie turned to see Gerald walk in. He looked a bit different today, more focused. The tension in the room shifted. Thanks for coming back, Gerald, Eddie said, stepping forward. We're glad to see you. Gerald nodded, gripping a folder tightly to his chest. I had a lot on my mind. He paused, surveying the faces before him. And I think it's time we talk about real change. Hope flickered in Eddie's heart like a flame reigniting. But the question loomed large: could they really create that change? Let us hear what you have to say, he said, fighting to keep his voice steadied. As Gerald opened his folder, Eddie felt every eye in the room on them, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. What if I said I might be able to offer $5 million? Gerald announced, his voice steady. The crowd gasped, and Eddie felt a mix of disbelief and joy swirling inside him. This could be the breakthrough they all been waiting for, or the moment it all fell apart. He clenched his fists but forced himself to breathe. What comes next? Gerald looked up, a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. Let us talk about what it really means to change lives. And as the room held its breath, Eddie knew that this conversation could alter the course of their community or fracture it forever. Eddie could hardly breathe. The words hung like a storm cloud over the room. $5 million. The number echoed in his mind, leaving a buzzing sound that drowned out everything else. Gerald's serious gaze met each person's wide eyes, sifted through their collective disbelief. 5 million, Lily whispered, clutching a crumpled paper in her small hand. For the center? Yes, but let me explain, Gerald said, his voice steadying the eruption of muted excitement. This money won't magically solve everything. It's a starting point, but it comes with conditions. A ripple of tension surged through the crowd. Eddie was aware of the shifting body language around him, hands anxiously smoothing out clothes, feet tapping against the floor, eyes darting nervously. And what are those conditions? Eddie dared to ask. He needed clarity, and more importantly, he needed hope. Gerald took a moment, his gaze scanning the room. We need a solid proposal. A plan that shows how this money will change lives not just for today, but for the future. I need to see that you people are unified and that the community backs this. Eddie felt the air thin out, realization sinking in. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust. He could feel the weight of everyone's hopes resting on him, pressing down like an anvil. We can do that, he said, more to himself than anyone else. We work together. We have ideas. Do we? Jerry jumped in, inspirited. We need workshops, outreach programs, activities that engage people, make them feel involved. Eddie nodded vigorously, fueled by the eagerness blooming inside him. Right. We can hold community forums, gather feedback, get input from everyone. Michelle stepped forward, her passion igniting. And we can use the garden we started. It'll be more than just a beautification project. It can be a community hub where people meet, learn, and dream together. The energy in the room shifted, sparks ignited in faces once trembling with doubt. Eddie marveled as possibilities materialized before him, their dreams bursting forth like blossoms in spring. But what if we fail? Tom's voice cut through the exhilaration. His expression was a mixture of fear and hope. What if we can't live up to what he wants? Eddie swallowed hard. What if we don't try? What if we let this slip through our fingers? Every eye turned to him, an ocean of uncertainty. I believe we can do this. We owe it to ourselves, our community. Gerald nodded, impressed with the shift. I like your spirit. I want to see that reflected in the proposal. A demonstration of community engagement. Your passion matters, and so does your unity. As words filtered through the room, Eddie stood at the center, feeling the winds of change, propelled by shared courage. Let us do it, Michelle shouted, a light in her eyes. The sound of agreement surged through the gathering, the wall of dread dismantling brick by brick. Together, Eddie added, letting the word hang in the air. We'll create something beautiful here, something that lasts. With newfound determination building like a tidal wave, the crew started brainstorming. Laughter intermingled with brainstorming, a blend of energy that felt akin to music. That fear that had choked Eddie back at home gave way to a symphony of ideas. The hours flew by, marked by sketches, laughter, and fiery passion. They felt alive, together in a shared vision. Yet, even as excitement surged, Eddie could sense a shadow lurking at the edges. What if it all crumbled? What if their dreams shattered against the hard rock of reality? Finally, as the sun dipped beyond the horizon, they gathered their notes, exhausted but invigorated. They were on the edge of hope and possibility. As they prepared to leave, Gerald's voice pulled Eddie back. You know, it's not just about the money. It's about worth. If you believe in what you're doing, others will too. Go ahead, put your heart into this. Driving home, Eddie replayed the day in his head. The thrill of teamwork mixed with that gnawing fear of failure. Was it just a dream, or was something real brewing? One thing was clear: this wasn't just about funding or a center. This was about lives. The hearts of every person in that room depended on it. But as hope flickered within him, a chilling thought crept in. What if they succeeded but lost sight of the real reason they started? Tomorrow would be crucial. They needed to dig deep, not just into plans, but into the very motivations behind their mission. Would they remember what truly mattered? The sun broke through Eddie's window the next morning, casting a warm glow over his cluttered desk. He squinted at the scattered notes from yesterday's meeting, each one filled with fresh ideas and dreams. Yet, beneath the surface of that excitement, a wave of uncertainty knotted his stomach. He had never wanted to let his community down, and now, the stakes felt higher than ever. Hey, you okay? Lily's voice interrupted his thoughts as she chose that moment to pop her head into the room. Her eyes were bright, hope radiating from her. Yeah, just thinking, he replied, forcing a smile as he pushed aside the doubts trying to creep in. We have a lot to figure out today. Let us meet at the center after lunch, she said, her enthusiasm infectious. I bet everyone will have fresh ideas after sleeping on it. As Eddie made his way to the center, his mind swirled with the potential ahead. He envisioned the garden blooming, people gathering, laughter echoing through the space. They could turn this community center into a hub of joy and creativity. But what if it didn't work? What if people didn't rally behind the proposal? He shook his head, willing the trepidation to fade. Once at the center, he was met by a buzzing crowd. The chairs were arranged in a circle, an intentional move meant to foster discussion. All right, everyone, let us start sharing ideas, Eddie encouraged, feeling the combined energy lift some of his weight. One by one, suggestions poured in: art workshops, a mentorship program for teens, fitness classes for all ages. Each idea sparked another, building layers of community involvement that raised spirits higher. Eddie felt the energy swell around him, a contagious excitement that filled the room. As they spoke, Eddie realized just how much the community depended on one another. The laughter, the shared references to past events, the stories passed down made it clear. This was more than a center. It was a shared identity. But then, amid the elation, Jerry's worried face broke through. What if we pitch all this, and it's not enough? What if they want something flashy instead of meaningful? Will we look like amateurs? Amateurs? Michelle piped up, a fire in her eyes. What we're offering isn't just a place. It's hope. It's connection. If they can't see that, then they're missing the point. Her passion triggered murmurs of agreement. Right, Eddie exclaimed, his resolve building. It's not about glitz or flash. It's about heart. We need to highlight our community's spirit, our shared value in coming together. We're not just asking for money, we're calling for trust. The lingering doubts began to diminish among the group. Eddie saw faces light up with appreciation. They were wrestling with something bigger than just a proposal now. They were fighting for their identities and their shared future. Just as they finished outlining their ideas, the door swung open, revealing Gerald. He looked around and nodded approvingly, sensing the positive shift. Great energy in here, he exclaimed. I can tell you're really digging deep, and that's exactly what I hoped to see. But just then, a phone pinged in Eddie's pocket. He pulled it out, his heart racing as he opened a text. It was a message from Tom, one of their quieter members who had been watching the discussion unfold. I heard from someone that there's a competitor who might want to pitch for that funding too. They're experienced, they have a flashy proposal. Eddie's chest tightened. Was this the threat they feared? All the excitement from earlier felt like it could crumble before him. Guys, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. We might have some competition. His words hung heavy in the air, drawing every eye toward him, and he could feel the weight of their hopes pressing down once again. What would they do next? Would their belief alone be enough to keep them standing tall in the face of a threat they hadn't seen coming? The challenge suddenly felt real, and Eddie knew they were facing a turning point. He looked around at the faces of his friends, each one flooded with determination. We have to make our proposal the best it can be. Together. We can't let fear hold us back. As murmurs of agreement began to rise again, Eddie felt a flicker of renewed hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the test they needed to truly unify them. He took a deep breath, ready to harness the moment. But somewhere in the back of his mind, the question nagged. Would they rise to the challenge, or would their unity shatter under pressure? Tomorrow would tell. Everything was on the line. The mood shifted palpably in the room. Eddie could feel the uncertainty cracking like ice underfoot. As conversations bubbled up, he sensed the energy dip just slightly, a reminder that fear lurked in their minds. All right, he said, taking charge again. Let us break down exactly what we've got. If we're going to face competition, we need our vision clear and strong. Lily stepped forward, clutching her notepad. We're unique. We're not just another proposal. We are the heart of this community. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. Let us emphasize how interconnected we are. Our stories, our experiences, they matter. Eddie nodded eagerly, sensing momentum building again. Exactly. We each have our own stories that shape our identities. Our proposal should reflect that, not just the flashy stuff. As ideas continued to flow, Eddie started making notes. Art, mentorship, fitness, let us tie them together. Think of it as a three-legged stool. If one leg wobbles, the whole thing collapses. The room chuckled at the imagery, a light moment breaking through the tension. But then Jerry raised his hand again, more determined this time. What if we turn this into an event? Like a community fair? Invite everyone to see what we're planning. Show them the heart behind the proposal. Now that's thinking, Michelle exclaimed, her eyes lighting up. A fair could really boost our visibility and show people how much we believe in this. Eddie felt the flicker of hope ignite into a flame. We can set up booths, Throw in some performances from local artists, invite food vendors. We can make it a celebration of us. Lily jumped in eagerly. We can even invite the kids to share what the center means to them. Can you imagine? A short video with snippets of their thoughts? Pure gold. Excitement rippled through the room as people began bouncing ideas off one another, each notion sparking new enthusiasm. Eddie couldn't help but smile. This was the essence of their community, alive and vibrant. Yet, against the joy, the reminder of the competitors still gnawed at the edges of his mind. They were not just up against a proposal. They had a polished, experienced organization to contend with. As they passionately hammered out the logistics, Eddie's phone buzzed again. Another text from Tom. I heard their proposal is coming together quickly. We need to act fast. Eddie's heart sank for a moment, and he took a deep breath. We need to rally our friends, families, and everyone who believes in us. Get them involved. We can't make this happen alone. His voice, though steady, held an urgency that caught the group's attention. Let us plan for tomorrow. If we can gather the community, we can show our strength. This is our moment to shine. Let us make it a potluck. Lily suggested, infectious enthusiasm in her voice. Everyone can bring a dish, and we can share our food traditions too. Food is love, after all. Nods and exclamations of agreement filled the air, and Eddie felt that familiar bond forming again. This was more than a competition. It was a fight for what made them unique. As the excitement swelled, a quiet voice cut through the noise. It was Sarah, shy yet determined. And what if we reach out to local businesses? They might want to support us too, right? Great idea, Eddie exclaimed, his heart racing with newfound energy. We could get them to sponsor the event or even provide supplies. It expands our reach and screams unity. The buzz escalated, voices rising in excitement. But amidst all the joy, Eddie felt a tug in his gut. Would this be enough? Were they truly ready to face whatever awaited them? They were discussing ways to reach out when Gerald returned, bringing a box of snacks to share. You're looking pumped. Keep that fire alive. Thanks, Gerald, Eddie said, feeling encouraged. We're brainstorming how we can pull this all together. The camaraderie felt like a lifeline. But in the back of Eddie's mind, he heard the echoes of Tom's worries. The knockout punch of competition loomed large. Could rewritten stories of their community match up against polished sales pitches? This was more than just a community center. It was a lifeline, a dream intertwined with the very fabric of who they were. As laughter filled the air once more, Eddie looked around at his friends. Their strength was undeniable. But could that heart truly outshine experience in the high-stakes world of funding? Tomorrow loomed like a giant, and the clock was ticking. He could feel the pressure build once again. And in that moment, he realized this was only the beginning of a battle that could change everything. But he would lead them into it. What would they sacrifice to secure their future? The answer awaited them, just a heartbeat away. Eddie stood in the center of the vibrant bustle, the smell of fresh-baked bread and spicy tacos filling the community center. Chairs filled with eager faces, the warmth of hope mixing with the aroma of home-cooked meals. Today was the day they'd unveil their proposal, capture their community's story, and fight for their center. With a flutter in his stomach, he scanned the room. Lily was bouncing on her heels near the entrance, her smile as bright as the sun breaking through the clouds. Her laughter mixed with the chatter of the gathered crowd, an orchestra of warmth and anticipation. Eddie knew this was bigger than all of them. It was about their lives, their heartbeats harmonizing as one. It was almost time. As Gerald walked in, an encouraging smile played on his lips, though Eddie couldn't shake the feeling of doubt lurking in the back of his mind. Would this meeting solidify their dreams, or would the future they'd imagined slip away? Let us get started, Eddie called out, his voice filled with determination, cutting through the murmurs. He felt the room's pulse intertwined hope, fear, and a dash of excitement. Each face before him carried a story, a reason to believe. Eddie stepped up, flanked by Michelle, Tom, and others from the planning committee. Holding the proposal tightly in his hands, he took a deep breath. Today, we're not just presenting numbers, we're sharing our dreams. As he spoke, he wove a tapestry of their lives, the struggles, the laughter, and the small victories that defined Maplewood. Each word painted a vivid picture, the warmth of community brewing like coffee that filled their cups each morning. A flurry of vibrant visuals flashed behind his eyes, children laughing, mothers sharing stories, neighbors lifting each other up. Eddie handed the floor to Lily, his heart swelling with pride. Hello, I'm going to show you all why this center matters. I love our park. It's where I play with my friends. She beamed, her passion contagious. A ripple of acknowledgement danced through the audience. Gerald nodded, his eyes glossed with uncharacteristic emotion. Eddie saw hope piercing through, a flicker of connection bridging the gap between worlds. Tom followed suit, sharing the heartfelt story of how the center had transformed his life. Michelle shared a detailed plan about workshops, fitness classes, and mentorship programs, tangible dreams wrapped in love and passion. As they spoke, their energy intertwined and spiraled up to the ceiling, igniting the air around them. As their presentation concluded, Eddie felt the room holding its breath. Gerald's expression shifted, a reflection of their raw honesty shining through like sunlight peeking over a horizon. Finally, he leaned forward, voice steady but quiet. Thank you all. You've shown me something I didn't expect. This isn't just a proposal. It's a declaration of who you are. I can see now that investing in this community means investing in real humans, each with hope, dreams, and lives worthy of being elevated. A wave of emotion surged through the crowd, the air thick with anticipation. Eddie's heart raced. This was at the moment they all craved. I'm ready to match the 5 million together, Gerald concluded, his face softening, revealing cracks in his previously impenetrable exterior. Gasps and cheers erupted as a warm wave of relief washed over Eddie. Lily squealed with delight. This was their chance. They could help each other shine, building the foundation of something much larger than a community center. But, Gerald continued, the weight of his voice sending tremors of urgency throughout the room. This project isn't just my investment. It's a commitment we all must make. We must keep the fire of community alive and nurture it. Eddie nodded vigorously, understanding the true depth of Gerald's words. They had to forge a path that would empower and inspire not just for a month or a year, but for generations. That's our intention, Gerald. Eddie called, voice brimming with gratitude. We believe in each other. We'll uphold this endeavor, and we will carry its weight forward. The applause echoed through the community center, blending into a melody of dreams. Eddie could feel the smiles. He could feel the hope all around him. In that moment, he realized they weren't just building a community center, they were rebuilding a future, anchoring it deep within the roots of their shared experiences and love. Together, they fought for their lives, and in that fight, they found something even greater than hope. They found belonging. As laughter filled the air, and the promise of a new beginning brought warmth. Eddie turned to look at Lily, her innocent eyes shining bright. He could see the future taking shape right before them. This was only the beginning, but it felt like the dawn of something beautiful, a journey filled with laughter, love, and unbreakable heartstrings pulling their community together. He was ready for whatever came next, knowing that they would walk that path side by side. The transformative power of connection would guide their way. And with that, Eddie knew at his core, this was home. If this journey inspired you, and you want to support our community, you need to subscribe now. Click that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss our incredible stories ahead. Leave a like now to fuel our fire, and share your reactions in the comments. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait, not even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel the power of transformation. Let us build this community together.